like the biggest symbol of Wakanda is hope. It's this idea that, there's possibilities out there for, minorities and people who haven't been represented before. And it's hard to talk about because it's so deeply personal to everybody who connects with him. And Wakanda in general. I think that what Marvel created was this thing that it's hard to not affect you when you see it, because it's this idealized version of what the world could be. And I've been really, 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 really excited and proud to even do a small bit of justice to what Marvel has already established in terms of the Black Panther character.
Wir müssen reden über Wakanda. Denn Marvels Avengers bekommt die bisher größte Erweiterung mit Black Panther namens War for Wakanda. Narrative Designerin bzw. Schreiberin Hannah und Senior Game Designer und Verantwortlicher für T'Challas Angriffe, Scott, erzählen uns dabei, worauf ihr euch am 17. August besonders freuen dürft. Welche Bedeutung Black Panther im Marvel-Universum aktuell hat und vor allem, welche Comic-Charaktere die beiden gerne noch in Videospielen sehen wollen. Viel Spaß mit unserem Interview zu War for Wakanda. Nice. So for you guys, what is what for the expansion War for Wakanda? What are the highlights you are looking forward to, and what do you think the players can look forward to in this expansion?
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on the story side of things, War for Wakanda is an original story taking place in our post-A-Day universe, where T'Challa was kind of in negotiations to join with the Avengers or ally with the Avengers before A-Day. And then when A-Day happened, they closed Wakanda off and went very isolationist. And 5 years later, now AIM has come knocking on their door in the form of Ulysses Claw, who has a personal vendetta against Wakanda. And I'm very excited to show off our version of Wakanda. It's rooted very much in the comics, and all of the characters are very much, their motivations and things like that are all very much tied to their comic characters. So I'm really excited to show this sort of fresh take on Wakanda that still has a lot of comic book lore to it, I think would be my answer.
Yeah, I think for me, it's two things. Obviously, I'm going to be biased, but playing as Black Panther, he's a really fun character. Obviously super popular. A lot of people want to play him, and it was really fun just kind of bringing him to life and like bringing elements of Black Panther that are specifically from the comics that players or people might not have seen yet. So being able to do that, and then I think really exploring Wakanda, just getting a new playground to be in, new environment, and just it's interesting to see all the detail that the team put into just the level design and the narrative and seeing all the characters and everything like that. So it's definitely a highlight.
Have you guys both have read the comics before working on this game?
Before working on Marvel's Avengers, like entirely?
No, before working on this like Panther
Wakanda.
expansion.
Okay. We did a ton of research. We read a ton of comics about Black Panther because he's got so many different interpretations from when he's first introduced till present day with the intergalactic Wakanda stuff that's going on in the comics. So it was a lot of research, a lot of note taking, and trying to figure out like which of these comic versions of like Black Panther are less well known, but very interesting. One of probably the most fun parts about doing comic research was finding characters that maybe were lesser known that we could kind of bring to the forefront in our version of Wakanda. One of our main characters is Zawavari, who's this sorcerer in Wakanda who appears in a couple of Black Panther comics here and there. And so it was really fun to be like, hey, I have done this research on this character and he's pretty minor, but I think we should go with it and we should make him a main character. So lots and lots and lots of comic book reading.
Yeah, it's same for the combat team. Although we some of us are more focused on like, oh, that looks really cool, as opposed to like, that seems interesting, from a narrative perspective. But yeah, it's something that we try and do with all the heroes, and Black Panther was no exception. Of we go to the source material, we look for things that, like I mentioned earlier, aren't necessarily as well established to some of the masses that are only familiar with Black Panther in more recent media. So, like one of the things that we did for him, he's got this ability in the comics to create daggers out of energy, and he uses them in melee combat and throws them and stuff like that. And we're like, well, we need a ranged attack. What is Black Panther going to have? And I was like, well, there's this really cool like thing that he can do with energy daggers. And so we're like, oh, well, we'll have him make vibranium daggers, like, the same way he does the like suit materialized thing from the movie. So it's definitely a source where we pull a lot of ideas that are, not well known, but can be really fun in the combat space. And so we've got a bunch of like screen caps from like, I'll sit there on my iPad with Marvel Unlimited and I'll like take a picture, put it in the notes.
That's being modest. He'd pick like really cool looking stuff. And I'm like, can we actually do this? And then they do. It's really cool.
Yeah. His ultimate was like, oh, there's like spiritual like panther like moments where you see Bast in spirit form. I was like, what if that wasn't an attack? And so yeah, we made the ultimate heroic kind of around that. Like he's summoning the power of Bast, and this giant spirit panther kind of comes in and hits the enemies when he does that. So
it's my favorite. I love it so much.
Yeah, actually, Scott, I just wanted to ask you about your favorite moves that Black Panther is going to have. Do you have to add any more?
I mean, definitely the ultimate is up there, but I think kind of he has two really kind of key moves in his arsenal. The one is his power attack, Pounce. So that's where he leaps over at the target and he'll actually grab them and pin them to the ground and start attacking them with the claws. And like that's kind of very signature for his character, right? Like, definitely pulling on like his martial prowess, his strength, and his agility, and just also the kind of feline theme, right? And pouncing onto the target. But he can do that on big enemies too, which is something that like the other heroes can't really grab onto the big enemies at all. So this is very unique for him. And then the other one is his like overcharge ability called Percussive Blast. And that one, you take that suit energy, his defense is all about like absorbing the hits, right? And building that energy in his suit. And so that move, basically, once you fill the meter up, you can discharge it all. And you get that big kinetic AoE that you see like from the movies and everything like that. And really celebrate that like technology in his suit and the sort of like core theme for what vibranium does. But then he sort of, again, we kind of pulled this straight from the comics. He has this one where he's has like these glowing claws. And so we basically that triggers energy claws. So he sort of buffs his melee damage, and that buff you kind of, for efficient play, is something that you actually want to loop. So you want to build that up, trigger it, and then while you're in combat, build the meter up and just keep going and looping that. And so that makes like a little mini game while you're doing the combat, of just kind of like managing that meter and doing what you can to build that up. And I think it's a really fun thing that some of the other heroes don't really have, is like, the other heroes are like Hulk, right? Smash, and Thor is beat people with the hammer. But like Panther's very much, you want to play defensively with him. You want to time your parries. You want to block attacks, and not just dodge, right? Like the dodging, I play a lot of games where I just evade out of the way. And I play our game a lot like that. But definitely we reward players for actually saying like, no, he's the Black Panther. He can absorb all that damage. And so as long as you play that very skillfully, you get rewarded for that. So,
yeah. Are there going to be some Easter eggs from the comics we can look forward to in the game? For example, when you loot or when you pick your suits or something like that?
There definitely are story Easter eggs for sure. We make nods to a lot of different comics throughout the story. And I definitely highly recommend exploring the new outpost, the Bernanzana outpost, because the artists and the entire team that put that together really like paid attention to detail in every single little moment in that whole outpost. So yeah, we try. I mean, there's so much comics lore that you can put in that it stops feeling like Easter eggs and just feels like this is how we're going to show off all of Wakanda and how complex it is by acknowledging all of these different facets of the country.
Yeah, a lot of our outfits are inspired by comic book looks. Fans of particular runs will have a lot of outfits that they'll recognize. We've obviously like our nameplates and stuff like that are straight up images from the comic series. So anyone that has a favorite might find something in there to show off.
So actually, I have heard that there are going to be 2 new villains in the expansion. And I think until now, we just only have seen Claw in the trailers. Can you tell me something about the other one?
Yeah.
Sure.
So the other one is Crossbones. He is working for Claw in this. So fans of the comics might recognize him. And yeah, he's basically there teaming up with Claw to steal vibranium, and is another obstacle that Black Panther and the Avengers will have to overcome.
Yeah. Story-wise, he's a really interesting villain because he just enjoys his villainy a lot. I think we've done a lot to show kind of complex villains for good reason previously, but Crossbones was a really fun character to put in because he really just really enjoys taking people down, and the more power handed to him, the better. So it's a kind of a refreshing thing. Like Claw has a lot of complex motivations. Crossbones just happy to be there.
All right. What do you guys think is so special about Black Panther as a character? How do you feel like he contributes to the bigger Marvel universe?
God, I mean, he's had, even just most recently, he's had such an impact on just pop culture in general. He's helped represent people who have kind of felt like they don't belong in geek spaces or don't belong in game spaces. And there's just so much to him. He's a fully fleshed character that's been around for so long, but to see his kind of resurgence into pop culture and how people have been able to identify with him and really relate to him has been amazing. I mean, he's the leader of a utopian nation that, it's like the biggest symbol of Wakanda is hope. It's this idea that, there's possibilities out there for, minorities and people who haven't been represented before. And it's hard to talk about because it's so deeply personal to everybody who connects with him, and Wakanda in general. I think that what Marvel created was this thing that it's hard to not affect you when you see it, because it's this idealized version of what the world could be. And I've been really, 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 really excited and proud to even do a small bit of justice to what Marvel has already established in terms of the Black Panther character.
Yeah, he was always definitely one that we looked at our roster of like what we would do post-launch, and that was one of like there are a bunch of heroes that you're like yeah, that one's going to be real special. Like, people love Hawkeye and Kate, right? And then there were a lot of people like, why isn't Hawkeye in the game? It's like, like we will definitely hit those, and everyone's kind of has their favorites. But I think Black Panther is, like Hannah said, such a huge icon in pop culture right now. And I think, definitely being able to bring him to life in our game is something that was like absolutely a must-have, like early on. Like we knew that like whoever we do next, like Black Panther is definitely on the schedule. Like we want to make it a big deal. Like he's the first, you know, his expansion is this first that we're like, oh, we're bringing Wakanda. Like there's a whole new space to him. Like it's something that we really wanted to base a lot of content around and bring into our game and show off, and you know, do as much as we could with it. So.
Was there any specific reason that led to Chris Judge being his voice? For like, did you feel like he would take this role as a very like strong one and feel this representation himself too?
I've told this story before. So when we were thinking about who we wanted to cast as Black Panther, we made a wish list of people we were like, we can't get these people, but this is the caliber that we want in terms of our T'Challa. He's older, he's more experienced as a leader, he's more reticent to ask for help from other people, he's very confident. And Chris Judge was number one. And we were like, we can't get him. It's not gonna happen. But that's what we're looking for, is like that caliber of authority and regality and things like that. And then we were like, well, what if we ask? What if we ask? I mean, the worst that could happen is he says no and we move on. And then he said yes. And so it was like, this was he was our number one pick. He is who we wanted. He is who we thought about when we were like crafting our T'Challa as a character. So to have him say yes, it was just like dream come true. It was amazing, because I think we really wanted a T'Challa that is more comfortable in his skin, more comfortable in his roles than we may have seen most recently in the movies or anything like that. We wanted someone who has, you know, a weight to him, a gravitas to him. And Chris Judge was just perfect for that.
All right. So my next question is kind of the similar direction. I feel like representation is super important in this case. And I noticed whenever I see something about the Black Panther in the media where I can also hear the things, which is the movies or this game, I always notice something very special about the music. I feel like the music is also representing like Black culture, for example. And I mean, you could have chosen any kind of genre for this. Why did you go with the same music?
So I'm not on the audio team, but I will say that there was a lot of thought into the sound of our Wakanda, and there's a certain established sound of Wakanda now from the movie and from, you know, what people have seen. And so it was more of an homage. It was more of we really wanted to feel like we're furthering the established Wakanda canon of what Wakanda sounds like. But I think the other big part of it was Wakanda and Ulysses Claw as a villain are all very much about sound. Vibranium is a lot about sound and kinetics and things like that. And so I wasn't in the decision-making process, but a lot of thought was put into what our Wakanda sounded like. And I think we really wanted it to continue the canon and be both familiar and unique at the same time. That's my thought process on it, because I work with audio a lot.
To both of you, Hannah and Scott, if you had to pick one Marvel Universe character who could be the hero of the main game, which one would you pick?
We already did her. Her name's Kamala Khan. Honestly, honest and truly, Kamala is what got me into reading comics before I started working at Crystal. Having a character who was a fangirl, who wrote fan fiction, who felt kind of on the outs of her peer group, who had a deep family connection that sometimes got in the way of her superheroing. Things like, she was so relatable, so interesting. And I don't think that I would want like when we design adding characters into our roster, it's always in a relationship to Kamala in some ways. Even with this Wakanda expansion and things like that, Kamala is still the heart. We have a family tree that we put together in terms of when we add heroes, where they fit on the family tree. And Kamala is very much at the center of that. She's sort of the reminder to all these other heroes who've been through a lot, that there's still hope to be found, that there's still a reason superheroes exist, that there's still a reason to fight, to make the world a better place. So yeah, she was my dream to write, and the fact that I actually get to is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. When we started this game and we knew we were going to work on Kamala, I started reading the comics, and I hadn't read them before. Like, I knew who Kamala Khan was, but I had not been reading a lot of comics at the time. And so I jumped in and went through, and she quickly became like one of my favorites. It reminded me a lot of reading Spider-Man when I was young, of like that very hopeful, the very young, very like kind of inexperienced hero that sort of goes from like figuring out what their powers are and helping out the neighborhood and trying to do good. And I think that's definitely struck a chord with me. So like she is by far one of my like favorites out of the ones we shipped. That said, anyone that can cast magic is definitely I'm a fantasy nerd, so you know, if I have the opportunity to do something with magic, I will.
All right. Last but not least, do you have anything to add to the German audience? Something you want to share about the new expansion?
I really hope that they enjoy our version of Wakanda. I hope they have a lot of fun checking out the new content and the new worlds and the new hero. I'm really, really proud of this one. I think it's some of the best work that the team has ever done. And I hope that you get emotional in some places and you laugh in some places, I think is my big takeaway.
Yeah, I think that, you know, now is a great time to jump into the game. We've got a lot of content, whether you're a new or returning player, especially new players. Like there is, you know, our story is, you know, quite a journey for Kamala and for the rest of the heroes. Got a good amount of time that players can spend in there. And then just to kind of cap it all off, we've had this new expansion with Wakanda. So I think, you know, players that are coming into it are going to have a lot to explore, a lot to get their hands on, and just being able to have fun in a new space with a new hero. So
thank you very much. Well, that's it. Thank you so much, Hannah and Scott, for having me. And yeah, have a nice, how do you call it? Publishing week.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.